Well, thank you for joining us again. We are going to have a conversation, and I don't know where we're going to go yet because I'm not the one who's choosing the conversation. How are you doing today?
I am doing well.
Great. Can you turn your camera on?
I figure out how to do it.
It should say video. There we go. Can you turn it sideways and set it up?
All right. So,
Great.
that good?
It's very good.
All right.
So here we are. It is May the 29th of 2020. It's a Friday.
Yes.
And we've been on this learning journey and adventure together. I'm curious, what would you like to talk about today?
I get to choose.
Yes, you do. I figure that figure that the patriarchal thing to do is for me to choose. But the non-patriarchal thing is for me to offer for you to choose.
Well, actually, non-patriarchal thing is just an honest exchange back and forth.
Okay, I'm up to that.
Yes, so I don't have an agenda, and I was interested in hearing your questions that you had, actually. So,
well, I think you've been watching for the local future channel. Have you seen all the videos or quite a few of them? What would you say?
Maybe half.
Okay.
Maybe half. Yes.
And can you tell me which ones you've seen so I can have some context, or like which speakers you've been following?
Well, I saw the one with Richard Heinberg. I saw the 6-hour one with Nicole, which was very helpful. I saw the one with Ellen. And then I've seen your Facebook posts and watch those, just trying to get a stream of consciousness for how you're thinking in the present. And because of the people and you interview, I have my own responses and my own thoughts when I'm listening to you and them. So that's very fun for me.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to make sure you know that we're streaming live to the Local Future channel on YouTube. Is that okay?
I'm trying to let it be okay, yes.
So just imagine there's one other person who is listening, because there probably only is one at any particular time, one person listening. And so there's a third person in the room with us who's just enjoying our conversation. They're not interacting, just listening. And so, but we should be mindful that they're here so that we're not talking about stuff that they're going to get lost on.
Well, and so that's what I do when I listen to you and Nicole. I'm the one person in the room that's listening and working at understanding. And so, yes. So I'm hoping.
Curious, is it okay if I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm curious, with that 6-hour chat that Nicole and I had, you said you found it helpful. I'm curious if there's anything you'd like to share about how you found it helpful, like in what way?
Well, I found it helpful because I actually work in relationships. Relationships are my priority.
And the topic of that one was how to face the fear of death and the unfolding of the future.
Yes. Yes, so very interesting for me. You posted today about the choice between, the fear of death again. And so I had posted a while back because you brought that up before. And I had said, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of living. This is the challenge that in some ways I'm afraid of, just because of life experience early. But I also had a solid grounding in a relationship with God or Jesus, which said, "Be not afraid and good luck." So, I recognized my own fears and what they were, not what somebody else told me is the norm for all humanity. I just actually looked at what was real for me and what was true for me and wanted to understand. And I trusted that, I really believed that love was the answer in the sense of being present with one another and talking with one another and sharing with one another. And that's the only way we're going to change this mess. So, very in the present. So, listening to you and Nicole helped me understand where you are and where she is. Just listening to her talk about it's fun to listen to what you're thinking underneath what the person is saying. So you have a relationship with yourself and your own growth and your own journey. And you are open to relationships with all others to have that kind of growth. And I haven't found that too much in my life. So my connection to you is the 2012 Local Future event that you did. So
The one at Shanty Creek?
Yes.
So that was called, well, I generally refer to that as the Vision, Action, Leadership Conference. So that was my most, most integrated conference because it was intended to be, if you had went to the other ones, you would have been like, oh, those were not nearly as good. Because that one in particular was structured more as a retreat setting. So it still had a lot of hierarchy and time structure, but it also allowed for a lot more, I think, egalitarianism as far as we were really trying to learn from one another and learn with one another a lot more. So there was less lectures with Q&As where there was an authority who was speaking to you for an hour and you were forced to listen to them. And then you were only allowed to ask them questions. And then was there really conversation time? Maybe, maybe not. So, but I would be interested to hear your reflections on that conference, both what you felt you gained from it and what you wished if we were to do another one in person, like a live one, in a real location, what you would wish for one like that.
Okay, so repeat those three things again.
So the first one is, what do you feel like you got out of that conference? Why were you there in the first place?
No, the three things that you set up the conference on.
Okay.
Those three things, just repeat those.
Well, it's called Vision, Action, Leadership. Yeah. So my premise was that in order to get us to a local future, first we had to have a vision, like we could actually describe, we could describe it for hours. Like if you and I went to another planet somewhere, or if we went to an uncontacted tribe and we're able to speak with them somehow, or wherever, we would be able to describe this world for days and days and days. We could describe lawn mowing, and we could describe, we could describe so much. Because we have this,
it's mostly what we do.
right. So the
We
idea
mostly-
was in order to get to a destination whose route to which you don't necessarily know, it's very, very helpful to have a very clear vision of it so you know you want to go there. For example, I have a pretty good vision, and most people do, of theme parks like Disney World and Disneyland. I have a very clear vision of Disney World. I've been there many, many times. I can almost visualize riding each ride, as many people can that have been there. So I have a very clear vision. I know where it's at. I know what it's like. I know how it feels. I know what the day's like. I know what there is to eat. It's a very, very clear, concise vision. If I wanted to go there, I know how to get there. I know how much it's going to cost. I know the routes to take. I know various routes to get there. I know how various people get there. I know very much what it's going to be like. But to get to a local future, a future beyond the civilization, in order to, there needs to be a very, very clear vision of at least some sort of destination that looks so exciting, so fun. It's like the Disneyland, the Disney World we want to go to. So then action and leadership, those are the tools by which we get there. What are the actions? And then actions have to be motivated by someone leading the way. Not someone necessarily, but some group of people, a community leading the way forward. So that was the premise.
Right. So I went to the conference with Marilyn, and it was a very good conference for me to go to also, because I had just come off from trying to run for governor in Michigan in 2010. So a vision, action, leadership was exactly what I was trying to learn. A new way of doing this. How do we do this? How do we move forward? And my slogan, I ran as a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green, and it's time to work for all of our dreams. And I had the Dream Peace Dance Party. And I was serious, extremely serious. So I was homeless, unemployed. And Marilyn says, well, you don't have to be homeless. I have a room. And I moved in with her. And she happens to have all those books and all the free speech TV. And so she went to work. And I have all those books too. But I had her books and her library. So it was absolutely perfect for me where I was at that particular time. So I also had gone to the White House Project, which was getting women in leadership. I had done that. I had also done a progressive year-long training for leadership before that. And I did tell them I wanted to run for president. They thought I was being a bit arrogant. So they said I should start lower. So I said, okay, I'll start for governor. But it's just me being me, having a vision, doing what actions I could that were in front of me to keep learning and keep growing and keep understanding. So it was fun at the conference because I could see the dynamics. You had co-leadership between yourself and Tim and I don't know
Sally.
the other. Yeah, so, and so I actually was there watching the dynamics of leadership. What are you doing as leaders? How do I connect with understanding? And so I tried to do a breakout session of what I learned running for governor. Of course, nobody came. I'm going, oh, okay.
Well, you know, if the way I typically organize breakout sessions are on the same way that the Occupy movement
Right.
organized them. So you get a group of people together and you have a a few people that, talk little speeches about, why we're here, how we're together. And then you say, hey, does anybody want to do a conference right now? And people are like, yeah, why don't we do a conference? And they say, okay, does anybody have anything they want to get a group together about? Something you want to teach or something you want to discuss? And then people will say, yeah, I do. Okay, go ahead. What do you want to do? And oh, I want to talk about renewable energy. Okay, what about you? Oh yeah, I'd like to have a discussion about ecofeminism. Okay, what about you? Oh yeah, I'm really interested in, what's happening on the factory farms. Oh, what about you? Oh, I really like to build a passive house. Okay, so then you go through everybody and you say, where do you want to meet? Okay, how much time do you think you want? Okay, and you go through each person and you say, okay, well, go to where you want to have your session. And everybody who just go pick a session, whichever session you want. Those are all the sessions that have been selected, or go off for yourself, have some journaling, pair up with somebody and have a little side conversation. They don't have to participate, but if you want to participate, go to the group. And normally you have like, if it's okay, I invite you to come back in an hour. And then you can share what you've learned. So I think that process it can be really, amazing, because when people come, they have something to share. But sometimes there are people, and I've been to these, I have offered these as well, where I want to talk about peak oil, for example. I'm the only one in my session. And so then it's my decision, am I going to just stay there sitting, or am I going to go join with some others? This reminds me very much of I was in Toronto in August for the animal rights leadership conference, and there was a rally and a parade and a demonstration and various actions. And the vision for that's pretty clear. Everybody should be free, including all the animals. It's such a clear vision. It's simple. There's no reason to enslave everybody. Everybody should be able to go anywhere they want. It doesn't matter if they're a human person or a cow person or a pig person or chicken person, or whatever person they are. And by that I mean a chicken, a cow, so that's just kind of a way of thinking of it. That people aren't only humans, all the animals are people in their own way. But there was one of these sorts of sessions. It was right before the parade, the demonstration, and that's exactly how it worked. People just decided, they were going to offer these sessions, and I ended up on one that was on, it was led by women. It was the one that was led by women. All the rest were led by men, and I was like, wait a second. I shouldn't go to the one that are led by men. I should go to the one that was led by women. And that one was different because it was done as a circle. It was very egalitarian. It was very patient. Everybody was learning and listening. People joined in. It was more women there than men. And a lot of the other groups where it was like a telling and then question answering. And this one was more compassionate, egalitarian, whatnot. But I'm sorry it took so much time. I'm being like the kind of controlling the time, but go ahead.
Okay, well, so that's right. I actually, in my group, wanted to talk about vision, action, and leadership, because it was actually what I was trying to do, and I had learned quite a bit by doing what I did. It's pretty amazing. So I had gone to your conference. I also went to a Bioneers conference.
Did you go to the one in Traverse City?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes, it was. But I also then tried to talk there. Trying to remember what it was about. Oh, yeah, they had a session again about politics and leadership. And so I went to that one, and they were talking about holons.
What's a holon again?
A holon is a certain level of worldview, in a sense. So there's a history of worldviews that stack on top of one another, and it's called a holon. It comes from Ken Wilber, who I mentioned to you in one of the posts, who wrote a brief history about everything. And so he talks about holons in that book. Now there's the word holy and there's the word holons. And I just sort of asked them if maybe we could make it a WHOLLY and make it holy, which with a W included.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So in the term holon, like I've been exploring this whole idea of the nature of those of us who are here right now in this culture and the nature of this culture. And it seems like the control of fire was the kind of the first thing where we were able to control our environment instead of being part of the environment. Now we felt like control extended beyond our bodies. So we had control of our bodies, of course, to a certain extent. We were part of the environment, like all the rest of the animals. But now suddenly we were able to exert control at a distance using fire. So that was the first one. And then another major one was when we became sedentary, when there was so much growing of grains that we actually built structures to live inside of. So that made us sedentary, kind of like a tree is sedentary, it stays in place. And then we started defending the food, and so we fenced it. And so that was kind of property, private property. So that's the next level. And then there were the herders, and the herders, we were at conflict with the herders. And so, we were trying to fend them off. This culture was trying to fend them off so the herds wouldn't eat the grain. And there was also the storage that came around the same time, because the grain wasn't, it wasn't perpetually regenerating. It came in crops. And so the crops were stored. And so this is where we became, I don't know, what other animal stores stuff, like a chipmunk or something? We started storing stuff. Before that, we would just, go out and eat fruit all day, whenever it was available. And so each of these little practices starts piling upon each other. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
In a sense, yes. So Ken Wilber puts it in layers of progress, and in the sense, it's something that keeps getting better and better. And part of this, the reason I got into Ken Wilber was because my children walked out of my entrepreneurial business because they wanted to make more money. Because I was just working at having what I need and building community. I told my kids I did not do busyness. I do consciousness, I do not do busyness or business. I do consciousness, sustainability, and community building. And they would get.
This was a coffee shop, right?
Yes, a coffee shop and a next door business where I did retreats and community potlucks, and anybody could use my coffee shop for anything they wanted to do. It was a free place, so I had peacemakers there.
So it sounds like it was a really great place to build some community in a very egalitarian way, a very loving, nurturing way, that everything was free.
It was, it was wonderful. I had gone to seminary and graduated from seminary and bought a coffee shop. And so the one that we left was my fourth coffee shop. So learning and growing and changing and trying to figure out how to create real, honest, loving community. So when my kids walked out, they went to a counselor who used Ken Wilber, who also used The Art of War. He was trained as I was as a pastor and as a counselor. And my children went to him, and he called me, without seeing me, an arrogant narcissist based on what they said, right? So after my kids walked out, closed the business, they said, will you go? And I said, of course I will go. So I went they wanted me to go to the counselor, so I did. So he is a marriage counselor and a business counselor, small business family counselor. I knew him because I had had him speak at a divorce singles group that I helped run for 6 years. Of course, he didn't remember me at all because I'm a nobody.
Well, I think we should set a little bit of context for the viewer. So the context is this is in Michigan, in Holland, and Holland has what? Say it again.
And Grand Rapids, yes.
And what would you say is the worldview or the religious ideology that is the dominant one in Holland and Grand Rapids where you were at?
Oh, it's Calvinist to the core.
And what is Calvinism for anybody that doesn't know?
Calvinism is actually the culture that we all live in, that we really don't understand that we live in it because we're not taught. So we all live in a Calvinist culture. We are totally under the thumb of Calvinism. All of our thinking, who we are, what we are, is Calvinist. But we are not taught that.
I thought we were kind of living in a, like the US is commonly referred to as a Christian nation, or maybe a Catholic, Protestant. So I don't understand what is the distinction between Calvinism? I mean, what are the practices or the beliefs that underpin Calvinism as separate from other religious organizations and traditions?
So in the process of those hold-ons, Calvin was a leader in the beginning of nation states.
When about was this?
500 years ago. So we've had 500 years of the separation of church and state. And we believe that is healthy. We believe that premise. And that's Calvin's premise.
But isn't that an accurate premise? We believe it to be.
It's not. It's a male premise.
It's a male premise?
Totally. Separates home, family, spirituality, love, and work, progress, control.
So that becomes the state, which is the structure.
Right.
And then faith is separated, and that's the egalitarian nature, the feminine side, more so to speak.
Well, so it's a progression, right? So faith in what begins to be the question. What do you have faith
in the now versus the future?
No, in the rule of law, in money. What do you trust? What do you trust? What are you trying to control? What are you trying to create? And to look at how we as a society are doing that. Because I grew up in that Christian Reformed faith.
Is that Calvinist? Is that the same?
Yes, yes. So Presbyterian churches are Calvinist. So there was a divide back then between Calvin, the middle road, and Luther, and the Anabaptists. So they were all
What are
three
the
different kinds.
what are the Anabaptists like? Who would that be modern day?
Mennonites.
Well, that's a big division.
Yeah, Calvin is what we live. Calvinism is what we live. Lutheranism is a bit kinder Calvinism. But
Are
it's still,
there offshoots of Lutheranism that would be like go by more common names, or because is it just the Lutheran Church, or is it like, are there several related churches?
well, they all have divided the way all the Protestants have divided into those three kind of segments. I mean, everything divides into what we need in order to really survive as a whole system. So on the one hand,
what is the difference of the beliefs of the Mennonites as contrasted with the Calvinists and the Lutherans? I mean, what is the key distinction?
so there, I can't give you the key distinctions. I mean, in a sense, it's like Calvinism is the separation of love and law.
Love and law?
Right. So if you are a member of the church and you love one another, then you will work at getting along. And if you're at the secular society, then you need to be under the law because you're not connected to the love and the community. You're not living in community. So then you need to be able to be punished, and because you're not willingly going to.
Well, that sounds like Old Testament punishment.
Well, yes, because you've not joined, the church. The church gives the controlling ideology. It's hierarchical. So Calvinism is the pastor, the elders, and the deacons. I mean, it's a system of rules from the elders and patronizing poop from the deacons. Not really looking at the real issue. Totally avoiding looking at the real issue. It's a way to manage and control.
How is this entire Calvinist, Lutheran, Mennonite branch of religion distinct from something like Eastern Orthodoxy or Catholicism or Judaism or Islam?
Okay, so I said Calvin. Lutheranism has a more positive view that we can become godlike, that we are good and we can make the world a good place. That is Lutheranism. Anabaptist is quite hierarchical. The men are in control, but you're connected with the earth and you're good stewards of the earth. So just different ways of viewing ourselves and what we can do. So Calvinism is very much controlled freedom. These are the rules. This is how it goes. This is what you do. Actually controlling female creativity and trying to create wealth. Control who your progeny is, make sure they're yours, make sure you work hard to make money and wealth and it gets passed down to your progeny, but it's all male. It's all male.
And you're saying make sure the children are your own. So are you pointing at the idea that monogamy is a construct of the church?
Monogamy is the construct of the whole history of male. I mean, the Old Testament Judaism starts out, it's not good for a man to be alone. You know, and they were in paradise and they were free, but they got kicked out because they wanted to get some knowledge. I mean, it's a whole story of patriarchy. Judaism, our whole history is patriarchy. I mean, we are bound in how men think. We are
How is
bound in that system.
how is how men think fundamentally different from how women think? I mean, what is patriarchy?
No,
I mean,
it's
what's the
not.
most?
Well, women carry babies for 9 months and they birth babies, right? They care about their babies. Now, grew up, born in 48, lived through the 50s, and the 60s, you know, was 13 when JFK was killed, you know, and I lost my train of thought there a minute.
We were talking about patriarchy and men versus women and how
Right,
that all relates to the entire story of
right,
religion.
right. So I grew up in a Christian home, Christian family, Calvinist. Some of my uncles were professors. My dad was a carpenter. Other brothers were carpenters. So I was a very bright person, student, A student, basketball player, editor of the yearbook, upper student council president. You know, I was a leader. And this was just when in Christendom, they were, you know, starting to question some things about the Pauline gospel or Jesus, or just all kinds of questioning was going on. It was good. But I also wanted to have a loving family. I wanted to be a healthy person. I wanted to create a healthy home, live in a healthy community, and live in a loving world. So that's kind of my vision. Well, of course, I had a boyfriend for 2 years, and he was 2 years older than I was, and just happened to get pregnant my senior year. And I was always,
You were happy to get pregnant?
yeah, just happened. No, it didn't just happen. But, you know, every year I was like this person who was, you know, I was always rumored to be pregnant every year, and yet I was a leader, you know, so I was this real contradiction in the Christian school. I didn't know that I was the person who was responsible for keeping that man in control. I thought that was his responsibility. And that whatever he was doing was his responsibility and his choice. He was making a choice, not just letting his testosterone run his life. So, you know, we were living in a time when women were allowed to be equal, and I just assumed I was. But I've discovered a whole lot since then about how much I'm not equal, totally. So as a woman, I look at how to create a good future, a really loving future, not bigger, better, faster, more, ego, money, job, career. So you know, earn lots of money so you can solve the problem doesn't work. It is the problem, and it's never going to solve the problem. So in the 60s, women started, you know, we talked about free love. Well, men were only talking about free love. I'm looking for responsible relationships because, and then I discovered the left was no different than the right as far as sexuality. On the one hand, women are supposed to be responsible with their bodies to be with a man and raise a family and be safe, and but that's not really what it is. A woman is married to a man and she gets to do what he wants to do. He gets to be the leader no matter what. It's his privilege. It's his entitlement. It's what he thinks he is. Now, I didn't, you know, I wanted to have an equal partnership, period. I won't be in a relationship that's not equal, open, and honest. But I've discovered that men don't want to really understand what that is or how that works or even trust it or even believe in it. They don't. They
Is that
believe
genetic or is that environmental? It's like cultural.
it's both. It's both. Um, you talk about the fear of death, like we're afraid of death. Well, that's not the truth. The truth is we're afraid of life. We're afraid of, you know, living, coming onto this earth and knowing nothing. And we have to figure out how to get beyond our anxiety and live. So if you choose to go along with the current cultural norms, life is much easier. And you deal with your anxiety by conforming. Well, the culture that you're born into is actually really not very healthy. So how do we really create the kind of world that we want? So as a woman, I was told I was a leader, I should be a leader, and I discovered that meant that I was to conform to all of the past rules and laws that men have deemed intelligent. So in my marriage, I was equal. And my husband was a male, you know, and he wanted to be a big basketball star. And he wasn't good enough to be that. Now, as a woman, I was that, but he and I were sort of at the same level of competition, so we could play and have fun together. It was just fun, you know, but for him, it was not so fun. So all the double standards, all of that flares up if a woman actually tries to be equal. All of the negative demons that are in the world show their face really fast because I'm just trying to love and create. And of course we can. We make the mess, so of course we can fix it. But we go down our individual little path and we don't stay connected with a whole. In our culture, we're all siloed into certain tracks. They wanted me to go to college and be siloed into basketball coach or medical technologist. Me, I want to understand the world. And I wanted to be a woman and a wife and a family and create what was important. Not too many people were thinking that was what was important. Women wanted to go get a job and be independent and become like men. I'm going, whew, why do you want to do that? So they did. So anyway, 10 years later, I was divorced with 6 kids because just whatever, my life. So then that was 1980, Reagan was coming aboard, and I'm going, okay, so everybody's running back to the 50s as fast as they can. Where father knows best, and men can have control again, and because the, equality, egalitarian, freedom, oh, those are scary things to men who golf. All they can, men who golf, hit a golf ball. All they can do is hit a golf ball, go down the trail, find the hole, put it in. It's all they're capable of doing. They're not capable of holistic thinking at all.
I think men are capable of holistic thinking.
Well, it's because they're, in a sense, they have the responsibility of taking care of home and family and having the answers and knowing what to do. And, it keeps them from actually being quiet, having blank space, and actually listening really what is necessary to do right now. Given the whole, we can understand the whole. We are amazing human beings, and we can do it differently. But the lies are so loud that anytime I challenge a lie, of course I'm look like I'm Pollyanna. Don't know what I'm talking about, because people really don't believe they can make a difference, or they don't really want to take that responsibility to make a difference.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I think I'm really still very interested in the branching of the religions from the beginning of these sorts of religions. I don't, even maybe further back than Abrahamic religions, and back before the story of the garden. Because there's been huge branching. So where's the origin of all this? And I mean, maybe it's not so important what all the branches is. What do you see as the predicament we're in right now in May 29th of 2020? And what do you see as a positive vision of a future that might be ahead for us?
Okay. So I have been initiated into the Tao. It's Chinese Eastern religion. I have studied Hinduism. I follow astrology. I follow the Mayan information. I follow the galactic shift information. So I follow the holistic religious systems and see the consequences of them. So the Tao, supposedly written 800 BC by Lao Tzu, is the beginning of patriarchy, as I see it in my studies, in my learning for myself. There's a book out there that called Language and the Goddess. And language is the beginning of the end of the goddess. So the goddess, and this is, in a sense, is the young virgin, the innocent virgin who just wants life to be beautiful.
Like Greta.
Like, yes, yes. So the religion, the Tao, divided things into the creative and the receptive. So yin and yang into language. And so the creative is yang, active, making things happen, moving forward. Yin is the receptive. And then those things were reified into gender when the men, see, women create life out of nothing in a sense, you know? I mean, you didn't know all of the physical happenings back then. So women were the life givers. They were also the wisdom givers because of how they viewed life. It's just how we view life. Men are the creative, trying to make life easy for themselves. So they can have a wife who does all the work and the children do all the work, and they're just trying to create a better life for everybody, supposedly. But I haven't found that to be true in my life. So that gendered stuff actually hid the real stuff of what each of us are, which is what the Tao tries to get to, of who we are at our best selves, at our highest selves, in living in love and harmony and peace and good stewardship, good creating. So the one track leads to seeking after wealth, and the other track leads to creating community, harmony, and peace. So the wealth track is the one that is the tangible outside one, and that's the one we think is going to do it. Like you asked me how I made money. Well, I don't make money. Governments make money, banks make money. I don't make money. But I know how to create a really good life out of nothing, because we don't need very much. We need very little. But that seeking after wealth and progeny and handing down your inheritance and what makes you a man, that's a story. Whew, pretty dangerous. And women are supposed to be the helpmate, you know? It's just a story. And then Jesus becomes another story in the Jewish community. You know, it's actually, you know, stories about how people are trying to live in life. You know, it's like sharing their story. All stories are past. All stories are stories about how to move forward or how to live in the world. So I look at the Bible as just stories from real people, don't know who they were or how they were, and trying to organize coherence. But the story became very patriarchal. It
Which
became
story?
the stories, all the stories are very patriarchal. They're all patriarchal.
So yesterday, can I interject?
Sure.
Yesterday I was talking with Diana Ritola, who I knew from Smart Kid Camp back in 1987 in Western Michigan University. And she was reflecting also on the difference between, she talked about the hero's journey. And in the hero's journey, there's one who brings salvation. And that is, she kind of described that as a description of patriarchy, that the solution is found in one strong. And she held up Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as the example in today's stories.
Right.
And she talked about, but that's not how positive change happens, because positive change, and I'm sorry that I'm paraphrasing her here, so I might not get it 100%, but she said, community is really what finds solutions to big problems. Community coming together is what, and everybody communicating with one another face to face, one to one, long conversations, short conversations, but patient and loving, and not pressured by artificial time limits.
Right.
So, I mean, there's some natural time limits, like the day. I mean, people get tired, but there are artificial limits like clocks and, whatever, the end of the day, the end of the bell, the next bell, the timer, wherever that happens to be. And of course, love, maternal love for a child, is extraordinarily patient. I mean, it's not time-based. You can't say, oh, you have to, that sort of love, it doesn't say, oh, you have to be at this certain spot at this certain time, or else
Right.
it'll be over. Or else, and we were talking about how we were spanked as children, and how spanking often relates to, and Diana was sharing, when she wants to go somewhere and her daughters are not moving quickly enough, it's like, come on,
Right.
let's get going. We're going to be late. So relating patriarchy to the hero's journey, relating to time, which relates to money, because money, as she and I touched on so briefly, money represents food. Food represents life, and life represents, of course, how long you can be alive. So money itself represents this patriarchy because it represents how much time you have left. And if you don't have enough money, then you only have this much time until a crisis, which means you have to make more money so you can get more food. Whereas all the other animals, like the bonobos, example, they're called the pygmy chimpanzees.
Right.
They live in the southern Congo, south of the Congo River. They just go out when they're hungry. They just go out and eat the fruit. They probably don't even. It's not like a thing. I mean, it's just part of their existence that they are one with nature, and fruit is just. I mean, they are one with the fruit, and the fruit is one with them, and it's all just kind of very flowy, and the energy just flows into them from the fruit and the nutrients, and it flows out of them back into the forest, and it's just very all connectedness, and their societies are very loving and compassionate and egalitarian, and they maintain strong relationships by an extraordinary degree of giving to each other, reciprocity, including sexual reciprocity. And for the bonobo communities, they're really based on this love concept and this givingness And the women share their sexuality with the men. The men not so much apparently. But going back to what Diana was saying, you know, to look at this control side of things, this patriarchy, it's the opposite of the hero's journey. It's the community journey. It's us all getting there together, working together as a connected community of, for example, the bonobo communities are about 100 in each one. So the community makes a living together. And if, you know, if there's a threat, they address it together. And if there's a, you know, the food is gone, then they move together. They don't necessarily all attack the same tree, join with the same tree at the same time. I mean, they spread out and they come back together for nighttime. And then they will go out in, you know, small groups, like friend groups of 5 or 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they come back. And so now it's back to you.
Right.
I think that was an interjection.
That's good. That's good. I have a granddaughter who's 20, just graduated from CNN here. She's a welder. And she's a Martinez, so she's a brown girl. And she said, I am so sick of hearing about the hero's journey. You know, it's not how we work. So we think we have to come together and create that tribe of 100 and 150. But the truth of the matter is we are already a big, huge tribe. So when religions divide up into those 3 streams, those are all streams. The heart of those streams are actually what we need. We don't need just one of them or just one way of, we need all 3 in order to continue life on Earth.
Can you remind me of the 3? I'm not getting them in my head at the moment.
Okay, so one is the hierarchy of male hierarchy connected to the earth, farming, et cetera, et cetera. The second hierarchy was a division between love and law, you know, trying to control, not really believing in love. The love thing is the hierarchical family. The love thing is the minister, the elders, the deacons, the husband, the wife, the children, the dog, and the cat.
2.
What? And then the third one is we actually do have the power to make a difference. So it has all of those other parts: law, love, earth, community. But it actually believes, like you, we can build that community and we can make a difference. So it's actually what we are trying to do as progressives, as left-leaning. We're trying to be more Lutheran, which is Minnesota, which is just ironic because it's all patriarchal. It's all one worldview in a tribal situation, doesn't recognize the whole, doesn't understand that law, the relationship between law and love, doesn't understand the relationship of really connecting to the earth. It's still all patriarchal control of my situation, out of fear, not of death, but really a fear of living with other men. It's a competition, it's one up, one down. All of it is that. It's a pecking order and you better stay in your pecking order. And the hero's journey is The wealthier you are, that's what we have been honoring forever. So Donald Trump is our dream, you know? Many men's dream that they don't want to acknowledge.
Is he their dream because they wish they could have lived the way that he claims to have lived?
Yes, they think they don't have any idea how that man is just going along with a program. You know, he's programmed like a robot. He's been programmed. Most men are programmed. They don't know they're programmed. You know, they're programmed. And they keep trying to get out of the box.
So for a man or a woman listening to this, it's not your fault that you've been programmed up to this moment.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, you know.
It was not under your control. You shouldn't feel bad about it.
That's exactly right. But as a woman, you know, I grew into that in the 60s when women were equal. So I took my equalness. So I didn't want to conform to anything that I didn't think was good for me or my children or the world around me. I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to stay with anybody, you know. I wanted men to learn how to love themselves, be responsible, love their neighbor. I mean, we have the directions.
So from the Sermon on the Mount, you appreciate that those words.
Yes, totally.
but you aren't like, you don't have the same view of that practice. You don't have the same view of that practice in that portion of the Bible that most people do, though, right? That when you look at the New Testament, the New Testament's typically thought of as, when someone was to describe it, they would say, well, this is what it is about. And you would describe it as what?
Well, I would describe it as,
what is the practice that
it's a new law, you know, it's a new law from the old law. The old law set up you know, a patriarchal system, but it's also the fulfillment of the old law. So we don't know our Bible anymore. We don't know the history of our consciousness. We don't know that kind of thing. So that was 2,000 years ago that we decided that maybe we as individuals could create that harmonious world, right? We tried to create a koinonia, a community of love and responsibility. Koinonia. Koinonia is a Greek word for a loving community. Building a church is loving community. It's not a building. What happened?
Practice.
It's practice. It's practicing love. So it was a step. I mean, so the divisions in Jesus' time were the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the Roman law. I mean, three ways of thinking about how to live in life, you know. One of them conforms and, you know, change from within. The other one wants to be rebellious and overthrow. And the other one is the law, and this is what you better follow, you get killed. You know, we have a reification of law, and how do we live in that law is the question. Is the law that we need to follow and conform to, or is the law a guideline of how to live? And as a woman who decided to be equal, and trusted my mind as much as any man's to think and create and be a leader. It's much easier to conform to a system that's there than it is actually to think for yourself, to really expect yourself to be able to create the world you want to create, and look at what that is and how you're going to do it, and every little piece of it. So we have a system of making money, jump into the system of making money, get a job, make money, do the best you can, but not really understand what you're creating or why. Sort of like, a job for job's sake, which is cancerous growth for growth's sake, for growth's sake. It has no consciousness to real living.
May I ask a possibly incendiary question?
Sure, anytime.
I don't understand. This is what I don't understand about the New Testament and the story of Jesus in general. And this is kind of a long question. How is it that a carpenter man became this teacher with this practice, that people started listening to him so much that he was able to have that people like tagging along with him wherever he went, or listening to him whenever he came to a town? How is it that, I mean, in the story where he goes into the desert for the 40 days and 40 nights, what is it that he learned there? Was it really like 40 days and 40 nights, or was it, was he observing nature? What was he pondering? I mean, he didn't have writing, I don't imagine. Was he alone, really? And why wasn't he married? I mean, he was like 30 years old. I mean, didn't people marry like when they were 15 or 16 or 17? I don't understand that. How could he not be married? He was a carpenter. Why wouldn't he be married? Was he not interested in women? Was he kind of like asexual, or was he homosexual? Or, see, and that's the incendiary part right there. Just wait. Or was he not male at all? Was he female? And was she the one that taught all the people that, we just need to stick together and love each other and, turn the other cheek and not resist evil? And, the men are not going to just keep beating us if we just, kind of like what Gandhi did, right? He didn't resist. He would have actions, but when in Africa, they came and they beat them and beat them and beat them, and everybody was bloodied, and everybody saw the violence that was coming downhill at them, and that ended up breaking down the system in Africa. And then he went back to India, and through his practice did the same thing. So I'm very curious about these things. Like, how is it that this guy became this sort of leader by basically saying, we just need to love everybody and place that as the most important thing above all else, above all the other Old Testament over Hebrewism as a religion? What are your thoughts on this for a scholar who's actually considered this and who's a woman, obviously, herself?
Well, so it's a story. It's a human story. The story of Jesus is a human story. We are each a manifestation of life, this kind of life on earth. And for me, I went to that God up there, and just said, I've been trying to follow what you say. Oh, it's really not very much fun. Like I'm just loving people, caring about people, caring about what we create, how we live together, that we do it well, listen to one another. Doesn't seem to be working very well. And so I just yelled at God, like, you better show your fucking face right now, or I'm going to go have all the fucking fun I've ever been accused of having. Because that's how men looked at me. Now, they were looking at me, of course, through their eyes, each their individual eyes, but of course it got projected onto me as if that was me. Well, it wasn't me. But God just said, I told you to love yourself and love your neighbor, and that's the whole ball of wax, and that's all you can do. And I'm going, shit. There's got to be more. But I knew there wasn't any more. I knew that I was this person who had to live in the world and love myself and love my neighbor. And then I, of course, discovered I could only love my neighbor as I love myself. I can't do it any differently. So the better I love myself, the better I can love my neighbor. And it's a learning process. So it's just common sense if you ever get down to the core of common sense. It's just the only thing that can work. You have to recognize and understand, know thyself, and then be open and know your neighbor, and a lifetime of learning. So Gandhi lived in a certain kind of culture. He went to a different culture, it didn't work the same way, right? Because the background wasn't there, the different background. So loving is the only thing that opens us up to really listening and understanding equality with one another. And so when you do that, you learn from every person that you meet. So it's just a really natural human way of living. Now, if you're afraid, then you're going to try to control everything and you're not going to listen to that core. Now, I was extremely afraid. So extremely afraid. So I had to find the core. I had to go to the core because there was no place else to go. Not my church, not my family, not my mother, not my sisters, not my neighbors. There was nobody. So I had to go to the deepest truth to live, just move on one day at a time. And that's all I could handle too. But my desire was for life to the fullest. Abundant life is the promise. So, the Bible just contains clues. So I look at the Bible as a patriarchal history with a red thread of desperate trying to learn how to make it better. So Jesus is just one of those threads. I don't know how he got to be that thread, but I understand the thread totally, that seeks to create loving, honest, caring, fullness community, the most, life, not controlling death, because you're already dead, because you're not living, you're not making choices. So we all have the freedom every single day to make loving choices. It's the only freedom we have. Anything else will get us into trouble. And even that gets you into trouble, but it's a trouble worth getting into versus anything else. Because the only thing that works is love. And love is connected to everything. It just is. It's open to everything. It's open to trusting each other that we can do this. We can do this. We don't have to do it our way, my way, your way, the highway. No, we just need to do it the best we can, each of us in us, and believe in that and be willing to do it. Well, if you're in a certain place on the hierarchy, the pecking order, and you believe in the system of money, you know, you'll never get there.
May I interject?
Yep.
So it's important to know that money simply, we already talked about how it represents life. A related aspect of money is that it is a measurement, a cutting up of into equal sized bits that seem to keep their same sizeness, which is not normal in nature, right? Everything changes in size other than rocks and stones, and even those weather, and mountains, and those change as well. It's a cutting up into bits of feelings of reciprocity. So, for example,
It's not really.
Well, let me finish the thought though, and then critique it. So, is it okay if I finish the thought?
Yes, yes, yes. Please do.
Okay. All right.
Please do.
So suppose you give me an apple, and I'm so thankful. And so I give you this $1 or whatever token it happens to be. And I say, you know, this token represents something of equal value. So this apple maybe has 100 calories. It represents an hour of my life. I mean, this is how much energy I need to live an hour. So that token that you have, whether it's the dollar bill or whatever, represents your claim on me to reciprocate in the future an equal amount of life back to you. Or the community. I mean, if the token is created by the community, then from the community. And so it represents life, but it also represents the direction of the giving to occur. And those that have the dollars are expecting to be given. Those that do not have the dollars are expected to give. That's the contract. That's the agreement. When one has a huge accumulation of dollars and the rest have none, what that means is that the one that has the huge accumulation has all the life they need. They have enough life for them and their family and whoever they want. They can give out life, basically. The ones that have no dollars, they're expected to give whatever they have, which is their freedom, which is their life. I mean, if you're giving your freedom, you're working for someone.
Right.
So, but the other way, without these tokens, which is the way all the other animals do it. I mean, this is quite an invention. I mean, it didn't come out until, it wasn't invented until Michael Hudson, economist, he says it was invented when there used to be granaries in the cities, and then you would bring your grain to the grain storage, and you would get credit for how much you brought in for the community, and then you could use that credit to pay off your bills that you had at like the ale house and wherever else. And so this is kind of the origin of it, and it goes back to storing stuff in agriculture. But the other way is just to be have reciprocal relationships where you're always going back, giving back and forth between yourself and the community. and the community can see you're giving because they tell stories and they say, oh, you know, he did this or she did this and she did this, or they just see, and it just becomes, you just become a community, and it doesn't matter anymore. And this is what happens with local currencies. So if you start a local currency in a very small community, you get people, and first it's all this excitement. Oh, let's use we can buy stuff from each other, and we can buy, you know, time from each other. I can buy you to come and work in my garden, and you can buy time to come and work in my garden, and da 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 da. And what happens is that it becomes a tool to create this network of connections, these interrelationships, these reciprocal relationships. And eventually people are like, I'm tired of passing around these little things and keeping notes on, you know, who owes what and every, and you transform into a community again, where everybody's just like, you know, hey, I need some help. Okay, come on, no problem. I need some, hey, you want to come over? And hey, I've got some extra stuff. You want to have some stuff? No problem. And I don't remember who I was talking to about this. It was, you know, back in the old days for me, like 2012, 2011-ish. And but I was like, boy, that's remarkable. So you're saying that by using this token locally that only has this certain acceptable radius, you know, the circle of trust radius, that you build this strong community, and eventually you don't need the token anymore because everybody just trusts everybody enough to want to help everybody. And then it brings love back into the community, which I think is remarkable. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. People can just be like, hey, all I need to do is give everyone everything they need. Go to someone and say, hey, what do you need? How can I help you? You want to come over, be inviting, be giving and inviting at the same time. And you can build that without, I mean, money is not necessary in this case at all. It can be a tool to take people from the patriarchy to the matriarchy, or whatever you want to call it, the loving side, the compassionate side. But it isn't the only way to get there. It's just one possible route to Disney World.
So I don't believe in going back to a matriarchy. I think all persons, when they're not living in love, are looking out for themselves. You know, they are doing the best they can to save themselves, right? So they don't really believe in community. They don't really trust their neighbor. They don't really trust that this can work. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust their neighbor. So it is a substitute for trust, money. It's like, we have to work together. So it's a way to work together without trust, actually. And what happens is, you know, the more money you have, the more toys you have, and the more you get to play. And hopefully at some point between Nixon and Trump, they'll find out how boring that is. But so far, they haven't figured out how boring that is. So when I talk about, you know, Jesus was the beginning of trusting the small little individual. That was the beginning of a shift to empowering each of us in community, that we can do this way. Now, they ran up against that whole big Greek Roman machine who came from the Greeks, you know. And so that Roman machine absorbed those individuals into a system, a Catholic system, honoring the kings, having their separate little identities and power and control.
I have a question again.
Sure.
How did the people who were following Jesus, how had they been making a living? If they weren't part of the Roman Empire, were they part of an empire if not, were they, I mean, were they an agrarian people, a pastoral people, or were they a herding people, like herd animals? Because there's different sorts of mentalities that go into being a pastoralist, an agrarianist, versus a herder. And empire, Roman Empire, Greek Empire. So, I mean, what was the organization of their culture prior to the Roman Empire coming?
So they lived in connection with the land that they lived on. So Galilee were fishermen, and so where they had water, I mean, they lived according to the land. But they had a history. They had, that Jewish Bible is a history, a written history. And then the Christian Bible is another written history with long stories of interpretation. It's the continuum, it's the continuum that holds the Western world together. The Greek and the Jews, the male and the female, the slave and the free, So the Bible says, heaven is no Jew or Greek. No, the Greeks before the Romans, right? Jews with their tribes and their community and their laws and their history together. They didn't write their Old Testament until after the Christians, right? They had to put those stories together to maintain their identity as Jews. It wasn't connected before. And the Christian church uses that, and then they have their New Testament that they then put together through that time. So it's a transition of thinking. But the Jews had a whole history of being tribal, independent, and had a connection to Yahweh. I am that I am.
Which is to say God.
Well, that's what we use a word God for that, but they didn't use a word with Yahweh. It was, I am that I am. I am a man, and I am going to be am that I am. So the Jews have a very powerful story that they lived it with. And they had the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the community, and the Holy of Holies. So that relationship with that internal story, like I have a huge internal story. That's the most important thing in my life. I am that I am, and nobody can make me different. Well, if you live in a culture that's hierarchical and you have to give up your freedom to make sure you can stay alive, that's different. So in some ways there's the worldly story, the world, and then there's the Jewish story in the world. And then the Christian story is a continuation of that Jewish story in the world of male kings, leaders, heroes, controlling the money, controlling the warriors, controlling the teachers, controlling the lawyers, it's a whole system, pecking order of safety for men or women too, then, and children and dogs and cats, like conform or be I am that I am. I am this powerful person who knows how to love herself and love her neighbor. And whatever they do doesn't change my love for them at all. And loving your enemy helps you learn the most. Because what you find out is everybody is trying to save themselves. And in order to save yourself, you have to actually let go and love everybody else and learn and connect, not to what you think it should be, but to what it actually is. And then how do we make it better when we understand it? But if we don't really Men are not going to look at their patriarchal need to control with a hammer, rather than trusting in love, like peace on earth and goodwill toward men. If men are not going to trust men, it's never going to happen. So I, as a woman, have done that. I have learned to trust myself and men. Which has been a long journey. But I know they are just conforming to what they've been taught, just like women are conforming to what they've been taught, to either find a man to save them or become the hero herself. You know, there's only two choices. You know, we have those two choices as women. We can become a feminist, or we can become a femininist. So these are thoughts that we have worked through in the last 40 years. When women...
When you say we, are you talking about yourself or about others?
No, I'm talking about the whole globe. I'm talking about, because we are one organism, like you say, we are that. We already are that. It's not something we have to create. It is what we are. So when you understand that is what we are, then you know how much power you have to affect real change by actually loving, not reacting, acting, choosing how to act, how to live, and know that it's the best. Like, that's why I live in a tiny home, almost off grid. As you know, it's just what I've learned is important. Empower myself, empower my neighbors to really work together, you know. And I actually trust the universe to give me what I need.
Like the rest of the animals, like all the animals.
Yes, yes. I have what I need. Rather than being in a system that thinks it knows what we need. Really learning for myself, you know, what's important, what do I need? And knowing that I'm that valuable in the universe, and that you are that valuable, and everything you do is a model, is an example of how we should live. Everything. So when you take yourself that seriously, you really look at what you're doing. Because it's that serious. So as a woman who had 6 kids and was a single mom at 30, I was quite serious. But then I was serious at 15 when I was sexually abused, and I was serious at 17 when I get pregnant and kicked out of high school, and I was serious when I looked at my future. Always. But in my Calvinist culture, I was thought to think critically and to love my neighbor. I just wondered why they didn't do it. But so, you know, that's my culture. That's how I grew up. And then I got to begin to understand everything else. And it, you know, was very difficult. On the other hand, it was easier than anything else. You know, if you don't take responsibility, you're perpetuating evil. And it's not good.
How do you define evil?
When you're doing something that's not healthy and good for you.
And so what's good?
Being healthy and loving your neighbor. And some good food and pure water and community and dancing and music and life. It's the best. It's the best.
Is it okay if I ask a question that might not follow exactly from our conversation?
Sure.
Okay, but I'm also getting kind of tired. Is it okay if we move towards conclusion?
Sure.
Okay. So when a person refers to God, how do you interpret that?
Oh, the highest good. Just the
So
highest good.
trying to give to everyone
No,
and love everyone?
no, it's not about giving to anyone. It's about relationship, an equal relationship. My relationship with God, I'm equal to God, in a sense. It's I am responsible for doing the highest good that I know. And then I'm responsible for forgiving myself when I fail and learn and do it better. But I don't have to sit in my failure. I can just keep going and keep learning how to love myself and love my neighbor. It's the highest good.
So and maybe this question is a bad question as far as it can't be answered. Where is God?
Inside of each of us.
And who is each of us?
Well, so the Bible talks about a heart, and God listens to the groanings of our heart. So God is whatever listens to the groanings of our heart. Now we're energy. We've learned we're energy. We learn that whatever we put out and whatever, we're receiving everybody's energy all the time. We're giving out energy all the time. It's an energy system. We talk about that. But we're all seeking, we all really do want life, so we seek it the way we've been taught to seek it. And we decide if it's good for everyone. Are we doing it on that level, or are we doing it just on an individual level? So God is the bigger level. It's just the bigger level.
If God exists as part of each of us in that way, what about, and this is kind of a not rhetorical, but I'm playing the role of someone who is asking a question that they might be trying to rile you up a little bit.
Right.
So what about other people? People of different colors, people of different immigrants, and people who live in other places, or people who are old or disabled or mentally have biological mental issues. What about the bonobos and the gorillas and the orangs and the dogs and the cats and the deer and the birds? What about them?
Well, everything. It's everything. It includes everything. I can't answer the questions. I'm a physical person on earth, so I'm limited by that. But my imagination and my energy and my brain is not limited by that. So all I know is that it's all connected. It all works together. It all fits together. And as humans, we have a choice either to work, fit in all of it, and make it work, all of it, or we can think we're superior. And the desire that we have for health and wholeness and community is only a private club. It's only one group of people who are in control of the world and really know how to make wealth and money, that energy that you were talking about. So those people who know how to get the most energy and wealth are the better ones, and the other ones, if too bad for them, just too bad for them, because they didn't decide to fit into perfectly into that hierarchical system of making money and patriarchy, you know, so our vision of the highest good can only be at the level of who we are. So it's different at every level. So,
I'm wondering if God is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
well, you know, you look at, I mean, if you look at evolution or you think about that and you think about, you know, how did all of these animals develop these defense mechanisms, these ways to camouflage from the predators, and you know, I mean, it all is necessary together, life and death and how we live and what's important. It's all, so, you know, do those butterflies groan for life? Do their hearts grow? You know, do they change according to their groans? Do we change according to our groans? You know, does our image of life change because how we're living is not working? And so we groan for something better. We're not conscious of it. It's not a thought, but it's a thing that's in us that desires something better. And then we become gatherers of information, and the more you love, the more information you gather. If you think you know the way, no matter who that is, if they think they know the way and know the future, they don't. Because it's an, you know, it's an accumulation of all. So if we don't take responsibility for all, then we are actually you know, we're stuck in a place that's damaging all. And as humans, we have that power.
I'm wondering if God is the difference between, and this might sound bizarre to start, is the difference between Earth now and Earth before life on it. Or in a similar way, Earth now and Mars now. And or Earth now and Venus now. That God is here in that, not separate from the earth, but as part of the earth, there's the living us.
Well,
And
so
whereas on Mars, for example, as far as we can tell, there's not that pattern organizing, energy collecting, self-structuring stuff.
right. So we live on a planet that created life. Who knows? I mean, but God in that life is a concept, and it varies. I mean, we all have a different concept of God. Now, Calvinists have a definite concept of God, and they still think about that God like they did 500 years ago. And that God was envisioned to come against that Catholic God who was pervasive and really rich and connected with the monarchs who really controlled everything. And there were people who were beginning to be humanists and thinking about their own personal individual control and how do we get out from under that other control and being slaves to them. So Calvinists came up with their own ideas of God and what's important. So they picked a different part of the Bible to focus on. So we pick on the part of whatever we hold sacred, but what we're only just reflecting who we are now. However you think about God is just reflecting who you are now, who you are. It has nothing to do with who God is. It's just a concept to reflect with, to reflect on life, not death, to reflect on how to live, how to be, how to act, how it's just a reflection. It's like a Rorschach test. You put into it who you are. And everybody does that, no matter what they believe. And you pick the path of following it and listening to it and trying to copy it and be a robot or a clone, or you can be a real live thinking interaction being. You can have life, or you can choose other ways of living.
I have two more big questions.
Okay.
So we've talked about Jesus and God, but there's the enemy, the adversary, Satan.
Right.
What is it? Or tell me about Satan.
Satan is just about when we think we know what's good for everybody. When we think we have all the answers right now for everything for everybody. It's when we try to, it's just a false power. Satan is a liar, is the embodiment of lies. So if you're not in relationship and you're just spouting everything, I've done that all my life. Spout what I know, what I think, because that's what we do. When I think what I know and what I think is what everybody else should think, then it's wrong. But if I'm just doing it because this is what I believe is good, and I'm willing to listen to hear what you think is good, and I want it to work together and be conscious, and so we can organize and we can make a difference. But if you're doing that and then people go, you think you're so smart. I'm going, no, you think I'm so smart. This is what you're projecting at me. And you don't want to do the dialogue, right? You want to avoid it. You want to run away, or you think you know everything. You think you have this is other people coming at me, and I'm going, no, I do believe in love. This is my highest power. This is what I believe in, but that just makes me open to everything, everybody's understanding and everybody's wrestling, and I can add my understanding and my wrestling, and we can come together and listen to one another, and in that way we consciously grow. We make a choice to grow, and we can do that. We have so many stories in the last 40 years and so many different paths and so many this is right, this is right, this is right, this is right. Whoa. The truth of the matter is we just need to believe we can do it now, because we can. There's enough money and enough food. It doesn't have to be overshoot. The only thing that's killing us is a civilization that's not civil. I chose to have babies when I was listening to everybody say, no, don't have babies. And I'm a woman, and I want to raise healthy babies, and I want to create a healthy world. Don't tell me not to have babies. This is my task. But it's not been honored in any way, shape, or form, because men think overpopulation is the problem. Well, it's not the problem. The problem is how men think. They know all the answers and won't listen to a woman as an equal, ever. So far, at least in my life. You're getting really close, which I love. Like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I'm loving it.
It's probably because of all the women in my life that I'm at this point right now. I mean, if you look at my life is my mother, my grandmother and grandfather, and he was they were both very nurturing. My grandmother on my mom's side, very nurturing. A school filled with female teachers mostly. Not university necessarily, but then teaching high school, a lot of women, and of course around females and males. Then going to middle school, teaching almost all women. The Courage to Lead program, almost all women. The animal freedom for animals, freedom for everyone.
Yes.
Movement, compassion, almost all women.
Well,
So many women.
That's good.
Inspiring women. I mean, powerful in that, just committed to love and so driven by caring.
Right.
Amazing. Like one of them, for example, even though it was the most inconvenient, difficult thing, going to stand outside with a sign near the road where there's the animal stuck inside, no freedom at all, about to be murdered, for food, for us, not necessary. And standing outside with her daughters, both of them, like little daughters, one in her arms.
Right.
Even though car wasn't working well, even though when she couldn't get it started, the one that came out from the farm was going to yell at her, and all she could do was cry. And yet it didn't dissuade her. I mean, she still believes in compassion and loving and altruism more than anything else. And this is just one of so many. I mean, there's so many of them. And so there have been so many in my life. I mean, that's, it's because of being able to interact with them that I'm able even to ask these sorts of questions.
Right. And I am not one to do those individual actions. I so want us all to work together in that method because it's the only thing that works. So it's why I ran for governor in Michigan, because we need the leadership that understands the power of love. It's not la sentimental slop, it's the real thing that makes a difference, that really cares to make a difference. And we get stuck on one issue. We have one issue rather than understanding the whole, understanding that every bit of money we use is creating our world. Everything, that money, how we use it is the most important thing. And if we use it for entertainment and escape and jobs, I mean, life is not that. Life is about how we love one another and how we love ourselves. And to know that is what creates life. It just puts you in the right direction, it puts you in the, I mean, people would say, well, Linda, you live in La La Land. I said, no, you live in La La Land. You believe in money. You believe money has the power to change things. Sorry, it only has the power to control you. You are the power behind that money that has the power to change everything. Oh, well, I can't do anything. Well, that's a lie. That false humility. Oh, I can't do anything. No, you're not willing to look at how you're part of the problem. You're not willing to look at yourself. You're not willing to change yourself. You're not willing to look at your entitlement. You're not willing to look at what your entitlement does to the whole world around you. You have no clue. You know, I mean, it took a long time for me to be a whole woman, to understand. And whew, my gosh, I mean, I went to college as a single mom with 6 kids. And the young little kids as the registrars wanted to know if I was a bored housewife. I said, I wish I was a bored housewife. You know, it's just really. My professor from Wayne State University said, well, I don't want to hear any excuses because of the kids. I just so remember my journey. It's been such a journey. But men usually run away if I challenge them as fast as they can. Because if they listened, they would have to change. Because they are created in the image of God, who is love, who loves each and every one of us, put us here, trust us with this beautiful place. Trust you, trust me, trust everyone to take care of this beautiful place. You know, that's my image of God.
I feel like in reflecting that and then asking my last 2 questions, which I'll give you both at the same time, I feel like this whole lack of trust, this lack of love for one another, this lack of truth, and those that lie, and those that just want that what they want when they want it, and will do whatever they want to buy whatever they can, no matter where it came from, no matter how it got there.
Right.
That this is like, you know, as a father of sons, 2 sons, I think of the struggle between wanting stuff, toys, and holding on to those toys, even when they're not touching the toys. There's this wanting and having. And then I think of like the bonobos, and yeah, they might have a toy, but they play with it and toss it away, and somebody else plays with it and tosses it away. But there's this whole thing about property, and if you touch my thing, I'm going to hit you. So there's a violence. Right. And then of course the whole system is structured around that as well. Like, right. You know, I have 1.742 acres, and if anyone comes on this, I can call up the police and say, someone's trespassing, bring your guns. Or I can bring out my own gun in Michigan and scare them away. Right. So violence, property being violence, because it allows you to do this, which is exactly the opposite of love. I mean, love would be, you see someone coming, you go out and say, hey, how are you doing? I was so bored. I really wanted to have a conversation. How can I help you? And that the use of money itself is an attack upon the world of life, and it's an attack upon love, and it's an attack upon God. And the ones who lie, especially, are the enemies of the world itself. I mean, they are the enemies of love, the enemies of compassion, the enemies of everyone, the ones that lie. Especially if they're in a position of authority of some sort, of being able to be listened to weekly or daily or minutely, you know, being attended to by those who fear life or fear other men or whatever they fear. Before I ask my last 2 questions, I just want to say I've appreciated this time with you so much.
Thank you. I have to plug in my phone. just to
Okay.
let you know.
And if you've watched this far in this video, our dear viewer, please click thumbs up so we know that you appreciated this. And, you know, subscribe so you can find other really interesting concepts. I mean, we're adults, and we're alive. What an amazing thing. We get to learn about all of everything. We have this opportunity. And, you know, sign up for email notifications and whatnot. And put in comments, especially if you have reflections. You know, what are your reflections on this sort of a conversation? What sort of insights did you get out of it? I mean, I'd love to know, because I'm sure there's stuff that I just went right over my head. And this channel, this Local Future channel on YouTube, or this series of podcasts, if you're listening to it as a podcast, I mean, this is a continuous sort of journey. So, you know, if you're like, wow, I'm not sure how did they get to this? You can go back and you can like listen through or watch through, and you can go all the way back to the 2008 or whatever the first video was posted on this, and kind of see the journey. And I'm not alone on this journey. I mean, the people who I've been talking with, many are along on that journey as well, and there's many more that are along on the journey, not even here with us, but somewhere. So, hi.
Hi. I'm plugged in.
Can you prop that up somewhere?
I can't really prop it, but I will hold it steady because I can see myself.
Okay. You have your one finger over the lens a little bit. There you go. So, last two questions, I'll give them to you both at the same time. No, I'm not going to. I'm going to give you one at a time.
Okay.
I have talked with and sat in circles where women will explain how they want to save the world by not having babies, because there's so many people. And the last time I was in a circle like that, I cried, because I was so sad that this culture has made them feel that it's their responsibility to save the world by not having a child. What would you, what are your thoughts on that? What would you say to them? I mean, especially some of these women who are young, like they're in their 20s.
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about people in their 60s, you know, past menopause. I'm talking about young women who it's because of the culture that's their decision-making process. Somehow they are able to hold back all the maternal instincts that are in them and say that, no, I'm not going to become pregnant ever. I'm never going to birth a baby. I'm never going to raise a child.
Well, it's been the main message that's been out there in our culture for the last 50 years, has been not honoring mothers, not honoring the earth. I mean, patriarchy is misogyny. It's total misogyny.
Misogyny meaning what?
Hating the creativity and power of women and trying to harness it for male progeny, male, you know, heterosexuality, male control, male, all of that is male control. So the story that women should not have more babies because of all these reasons, women are going to do what they think is good for the universe. So I could still think for myself in the early 60s of what I really wanted, not what the culture around me said. I was brought up in a Christian, you know, And I looked at those homes and families, and I certainly didn't want to copy any of those. So, you know, it's like, okay, who do I become? So the story for men is putting the responsibility on women not to have babies, on women to get an education so as not to have babies. You know, it's all not what's healthy for life. So it's all perpetuating a male species, male power. It's all about perpetuating male power as it's been organized. So women, being the good little doobies they are, listen and follow. And, you know, I chose to think for myself. I want to be a leader that actually does something to really change the world, not to perpetuate evil. And I'm just who I am, so I believed I could, as being young and naive. But now I've learned I know we can, because I stayed on the path. And it's not about organizing this tribe or that tribe to do this. It's about believing we can do it and need to, and it's important, and just get on with it. You know?
One of the things I read at some point was that in a indigenous culture, in a uncontacted group of people, for example, in the Amazon or in New Guinea or on Sentinel Island near India, that pregnancies, raising a child, you know, nursing the child until the child was, you know, even partial nursing until the child was 6 or 7 or 8, even in some cases, maybe not quite that old. I don't know exactly. I mean, I don't know that a study's been done on that. But then, you know, after the child has weaned, then it's time for another child. And that was kind of the normal rhythm. And if a child died, well, then it was time for a new child, another child.
Okay.
And with the advent of agriculture, there was so much food, and perhaps, you know, the enslavement of the cow, that the milk was taken from the cow and given to the human, and then more the years between pregnancies were shortened to about 3 to 2 years. And so that led to this huge population explosion that started back during the agricultural revolution.
I think it might have started a little later, but we will go there.
Okay. Well, so I feel like someone might say to me, Aaron, you're advocating that women just have all the children that they could possibly have, and they're pregnant every year, and they have 50 children, because if they start, you know, when they're 15, and you know, they could have a lot, well, 15 to 45, 15, they could have like 30 children or something. And no, I mean, I don't think that is the normal way that humans or any animal, the bonobos, for example, I mean, their population remains more or less stable, because I mean, the babies are spread way out. They're like 4 or 5, 6, 7 years apart for one mother. So I would hope, just to open the possibility that someone who has decided not to have a pregnancy because we have too many people, way too many people, because we're destroying the environment, because we, it's not we at all.
Right.
It's this whole non-loving mentality.
That's right.
So, I don't know if that's useful information or not, but I just
Well,
remember I cried. I was so sad because for a woman, there is so much joy that comes with having a pregnancy. It's like euphoria for so much of the time. And then to nurse and to care for, I mean, it's the most joyous thing that a woman could, and to be denied that by culture and norms, it's heartbreaking.
yes, it is. So, I nursed my first baby and my husband like, what are you doing? Like, I think this is just normal. Nobody I knew did it. I mean, if you grow up in the culture which we live in, where marriage is ownership of the woman and ownership of the children and have as many as you can, I mean, this is male thinking. Males are responsible for impregnating. What do men think is what makes the difference, Um, my choice is being receptive or not, My choice is not, I'm not able to control that. Men are the ones that are creating those progeny. Men are the ones that are responsible for what they create. Men need to look at their responsibility and how important it is, and not make women in charge of that part of life. I mean, I wanted to be, I thought my husband to be was a partner. And actually, when he lived with me, he was. It's the cultural norms that broke up our marriage. It's the cultural lies that broke up our marriage. Our marriage was good, but he went back into the old pattern and couldn't move forward. And he's still stuck there today. It's hard to watch. I mean, you were talking about your sons. So that's a normal male. Those are normal males. So look at what that normal creates. Look at the solutions we've created. Look at, how we've tried to solve that problem. The laws are one way to solve that problem. Marriage is a way, I mean, marriage is a way to control men's lust. Business is a way to control men's freedom. There's one other one I don't remember. This is a book I read in 2008 from the Christian Reformed Church. I took a course here at UNM. He was taking that information and stamping Christian on it. But there are books out there that talk about these kind of things. Like, I read that book and I just went, oh my God, people are teaching this. They think this is true. And then I went to talk to the president of Calvin College, who was a classmate of mine, and that was his favorite book. Just like, so there are ways we've tried to solve the problems you are having with your sons. It's normal male development. I have 7 granddaughters first, and then I have 4 grandsons, and then I have a granddaughter and I have a grandson. And I had 5 daughters and 1 son, 2 sons. I came from a family of 3 girls. So I had to learn the hard way what men really are.
Are
I
you ready
had
for
to
the
kind of,
question?
what?
I don't want to cut you off, so please continue.
Okay. Well,
And then
anyway,
when
so if you look at patriarchy as a way to control men, and women, because of who they are, hear and try to do what's best. That's what they do. So they follow the political rules and how to run, and they follow the directions. They do what they need to do. But they don't understand the whole embeddedness, how embedded we are in patriarchy. They don't understand that part. Nobody teaches them that part. We are embedded in patriarchy. We're swimming in the sea. We don't see the sea because we're in it. And because I was so angry and hurt and alone, I wanted to bring everybody together. Because there was no one, because we're so embedded. And the more powerful I felt in loving, the more people rejected me, even my children. I haven't done anything yet. I haven't done anything with my life. I understand this fucking mess, but I haven't done anything with my life, you know? And because I'm a woman, anything I say is dismissed. I mean, my son does it all the time, you know, because they got smarter than me. I'm just going, yep, I know. But I know they didn't, you know, they went back where it was easier. It's easier to conform than think for yourself. And my kids are great. They actually have communities that they love. They're very independent, caring, wonderful human beings, but they're still embedded in the systems that they haven't studied. And I have. So grandma gets to be around the babies when it's important, when they're developing their own selves, and she gets to encourage them to be these total radical human beings who love and care and are capable and wonderful and can do anything. And there was just an article in the Smithsonian's about how important grandmothers are in our evolution. And I didn't read it, but I sure knew what it meant for real. Because I took the normal path of having babies young and having grandbabies young and being able to learn from real human development, not from what we're told in all of those siloed educational systems that we have, which are all siloed and do not have the whole picture, do not listen to one another for the whole picture. They just think they're each right. And of course, they're each wrong because they don't know enough. They only have a little bit of the picture, and you can only talk from the picture that you have. So if we think population is the problem and not the civilization that's not civil, then women will do. And they too, you know, they're tired of being under the thumb, and they get depressed when they can't be their whole selves, because they are just as thinking and creative and smart as men. And they actually know better about relationships, but they can't do anything. Really can't. It takes the men to change. You have to change. You're not entitled. You're only entitled to love and care and be responsible. You're not entitled to boss and go play and pretend that being responsible is awful, and when it's the most wonderful thing in the world. Have great power to make a difference.
You ready for the last question?
Sure.
And again, before I share this last question, I want to thank you again so much, Linda, for your patience and your sharing your wisdom and your insights and your accumulated knowledge of religion and all of this.
I have a lot of that.
I really appreciate it. And you know, the reason that I was intrigued by you is because you became one of my social media friends, and you kept on posting these really, the things you post are so true. And you're like, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that is really relevant. And you, like the curation that you do prior to posting something, you can see, wow, this is really a particular worldview that she has. And Marilyn is kind of like that too. You know, she has these, it's very, like if I want to know what's going on in the world, I don't have to go to media. I can just open up your Facebook feed, the two of you, and read your Facebook feed, I'm like, oh, that's what's going on in the world. I mean, this is like the real stuff that's going on in the world. So,
Right.
and so I really appreciate that. Okay. So here's the last question. What is heaven?
Well, we pray for heaven on earth. And heaven is the possibility of love to reign. Period. In reality. Not in perfectness, but just in reality. To actually see all the good and all the patriarchy that we've gone through. And see all the good, all the things that we've learned and learned how to do, and that we can harness all of that to make a really good life for all of us, and we can trust each other to do that. It is that attitude of trusting each other, even the enemy, because the enemy is us. And the more we understand the enemy, the more we understand ourselves, because we're all in this together. So it's just living in harmony with this beautiful thing that we have, weeds and all. Not trying to make a perfect garden, just living with it as it is now.
And I suppose if there's a continuum, on the other end of it is hell. And what is hell?
Hell is what we've been creating for a long time, because it's been the separation of males and females. So a separation is hell. Separation from the truth. Looking at the world a certain way, like we need to fix it. No, we need to get in line with it. And do what we do and learn from it. The path is unknown, wide open, but we can make it a wonderful place for everybody. And if we don't make it a wonderful place for everybody, it's a wonderful place for nobody. Can't imagine Trump is really having any fun out there golfing every day. I mean, how boring can you get? You know, and his pretty children are on top and his ugly children are somewhere else, you know? I mean, it's so stupid. I mean, it's totally, you look at Trump and you look at our culture. You just flat out look at where our culture is. I know. Or Biden, he gives me the creeps just as much as Trump's. They're no different from each other. They are creepy. It's creepy. It's awful. And why people can't see that, I don't know. And I want to run for president. I want to be a write-in candidate so we can have peace on earth, goodwill toward men. You know, this is what we started 2,000 years ago. And we can do it, of course. You know? And we really have to, or we're done for. We have a choice. Done for, change. Repeat the past, learn something new. Oh my gosh. I mean, I wanted to repeat the past in the sense of having a home, family, organization as it was, and make it really good. And then I ran into everything that's been distorted about it.
Can I insert something, because I forgot it and then I remembered it before
Okay.
I forget it again?
Okay.
So one of my friends over social media, I shared this writing I did with him yesterday, and along with a few other people whose insights I appreciate deeply. And he came back and he said, well, you know, I think things should be more equal. You know, I think there should never be, you know, a boss should never get 10 times more than the least paid worker. I said, that's interesting. So in a family, like in my household, you know, I should make sure that I never get more than 10 times more food than each of the boys. And I should never make sure that I have 10 times more of the freedom. You know, I have 10 hours of freedom and they, so, you know, as far as not obligated to do stuff, and they only have 1 hour of freedom, you know. That, you know, I should have 10 times. I mean, if there was an assortment of toys, I should have 10 times the toys, and they should only have one of the one portion of the toys, and that should be okay. It should just be okay in the household that that's okay, or that I get to pick 10 items of food before they get to pick any, or something like that. And I mean, love is not like that. I mean, love is sharing and sharing together, and everybody is able to share. And
Right. So, you know, maybe we just need a living wage for everybody. And money is just a tool that we've created so we could actually make it do what we want it to do, and we could see the consequences of doing that. It'd be a really good thing.
well, I think everybody needs to be able to, we desire that everybody has healthy food to eat every day. It doesn't take money to do that. It takes community to do that. It doesn't
Yes.
take money to do that. Because a community can make a living together. They can grow food together. They can collect food together, and they can share that food equally, each to their needs. You know, each to their physiological needs. So it doesn't take money. And to be practical, well, there could be not soup kitchens, but, you know, cafeterias.
Right. Well, we have been taught a certain way to live, and rich or poor, everybody believes in that way to live, you know, that you need to have a job and you need to make money in order to live. And I go, no, you need to have water and food and community in order to live. That's the truth. And how we do that is how we choose to do that. Now, we've chosen to do it this way. So if you're more talented and you're brighter and you're not quite as caring, you can make more money because you're not really believing in equality and stuff for everyone. You're really only seeking what you want, not what's really good for community. And we are all in that trap. Left, right, nobody wants to give up that power they think they have to create their own life. Well, they don't have the power to create their life. It's connected to everything else. And if you're not doing what's good, it's going to crash. And no matter how much money you have, it's going to crash. And you can try to save yourself some more and more and more, but it's not going to work. So the only thing that works is listening and loving each other and trusting each other, even if you're untrustworthy. You know, I can love Trump and just feel really bad for him because he's wasted his whole life and he's wasting everybody else's lives. But he's only the tip of the iceberg of the whole world of patriarchy. You know, we're all in it. We're all melting together until we learn how to flow. You know, we're all frozen until we flow. I suggest we flow consciously now. You know, it's what I try to do. It's not easy. I mean, my kids think, I have a daughter whose husband works for Elon Musk and SpaceX. You know, my daughter Rebecca, who believed in all of this stuff, married a macho Mexican city male who's abusive. She passed away 4 years ago of breast cancer. Yeah. I lost my first son because I had no clue how to be a mom and how to be a mother, because there wasn't anybody talking about how to be a mom and a mother, how important that was. You know, we're only talking about how to make money, how to change things, how to, you know, create a bigger, better, faster civilization. It's crazy. But I paid the prices. You know, I lost my husband because I didn't kiss his ass, you know. On the other hand, I might be the only person who's kissed his ass because I love him. And I didn't, you know, my kids think I married him and had babies because I wanted him to take care of me and make money. Well, of course not. I wanted to have an equal relationship and create a wonderful world together. But my kids believe the stories that are out there, you know, and I'm the one that shouldn't. Well, of course, they're all glad they were born. But after that, because you know, I couldn't raise my children even in this culture because this culture's ideology is so powerful. Absolutely. You know, I can't talk to anybody because that culture is so powerful. And if they would just let go and love, it's so much fun because when I first started, it was really fun. It was so much fun. You know, I could love my husband no matter what he did. You know, he moved in with another woman, and I could still love him and understand and try to make a good life, and gave him the freedom to choose. You get to choose. He wanted me to divorce him. I said, well, I've decided it's best that we stay. And if you stay, we'll make it a wonderful thing. But if you choose to leave, then I'll deal with it when that happens. I made a choice. So now you get to make a choice. So he finally divorced me after 7 years. A couple more babies, and his girlfriend had a baby, and, you know, got complicated. And then he thought I was going to love him and his new wife. And then I said, you know, I'm a big person, but I can't go there. I'm not going to be her best friend. You know, but he expected me to be her best friend. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. So it's amazing, but love is the most powerful thing on earth. But if we quit, we quit. We don't do it. And it's the only way to learn. You don't learn otherwise. If you don't dare love, you don't dare get outside of yourself and how you think and what you think. And you're stuck. And when somebody comes in and challenges it and you just, you know, attack them because you don't understand what they're saying and why, and you know they're wrong because you're right, then you missed an opportunity to learn and grow. Because until we understand, you know, faith seeks understanding. Love is understanding. It's all about learning how to love. Everything. The good, bad, and the ugly. Because then you understand. If you don't love, if you don't take the time to understand, you don't understand. That's how it is, you know. Love is very logical. Extremely logical. It's not about premises, though. It's not about pre-program. It's actually about being in the present, the accumulation of the past, creating a conscious future. That's what love is. The best you can. You're not required to do any more than your best, but you're required to keep learning and forgive and understand and forgive and understand and keep going. And don't quit, because if you quit, if you don't persevere, we could go all kinds of places there. So language reifies things into words, and then you can miss the understanding. Language is a beautiful thing. Words are just marvelous. But if you don't know that they're living words, they mean something. They're living, they're alive. Everything you say is alive and creates something. You know, I don't know if that's the human world we live in when we're just manifesting it. You know, our eyes just see it and we're just sitting in one place somewhere. I don't know, you know, the matrix. But I know
You
our
know something?
living.
I always assume that there is a chance that that is the case. I always do. And I don't think I'm the only one that always assumes there's a chance. All right. I'm so hungry to spend
Okay.
time with my sons.
Good, go for it. But when you look at your sons, just see evolution in them, because that's the process they're going through. That's the process the world has gone through. And we need to really understand the real process, not the ones we make up in college or graduate school. There is a real process. And people have found it for lots of years, or we wouldn't be here. People have understood that process in every hole on that there is. There's been somebody who understands the whole, enabling us to move forward. You know, this is our only hope to move forward. It's to understand the whole. Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending all this time with me today.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
thank you for dear viewer, if you stuck through all of this, even the chances where you thought it was going to be the end. It's a journey. It's not a destination. It's important.
But it is a destination. It is a destination too.
Okay.
That heaven thing.
Ah, yes.
Whatever
Well,
that is, that's it.
I'm hoping we're headed that way. I think we are.
I think we are too. At least I'm working on it. That's how I see it. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.